Thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. This is a kind of a layout page I was doing for my previous video. I had stamped out a few trees and I thought, yeah, it's going to be a little bit too cluttered for the number of subject matter stamps I used, and it was a Halloween scene. If you're curious about that one, you can check out the previous video. But I liked the kind of the layout of this composition. I had to stamp a few more trees in here, as if you choose to watch this video, you'll see. But I thought I want to go for something. I had a bunch of these spruce trees stamped, and I wanted to have some like a wind or something like that blowing through them. I wanted to see if I can do some sort of a scene or ink application that would kind of depict that. So I finished stamping a few more trees out. This is a very simple composition in terms of the number of stamps used. It's basically Spruce Tree Lg and Sedge Filler right there. And then, when I got down to the very end, I thought, let's stamp in this little doe down here to, kind of create a nice focal point. And I used a Scenic Sentiment night music, and I thought that looked pretty good up there. I often like copy or words, within artwork. I don't do it a lot in my own scenes. I should do more of that, but I like the merger of, letter forms and the artwork in scenes, and I thought that night music went along with this one fairly well. Some splatter painting techniques and the use of the Dr. Martin's bleed proof white. You can see it over here. And, some of my gel pen techniques in the trees, and creating these little glowing spheres of light that I did a lot in my previous scene too. I thought I'd use it in here to create a little bit of that whimsical, kind of magical element to the overall result. So anyways, if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for tuning into the Stampscapes channel. Okay, we have a setting here. It was just kind of just a basic layout for, I usually don't do that, but it was kind of a layout for this previous Halloween scene that I just did. And this is just a layout. I was kind of laying some things out, figuring out where I wanted to place some trees, and this composition right here wasn't going to be good for this one because I had so many characters to place within here, and I thought just, some of these uneven trees, placed at different locations wasn't going to leave enough room for all of these different little players within this composition. So I just kind of left this, but I was thinking I want to finish this off. I think I can make a kind of an interesting, hopefully, or I can try to make an interesting looking composition out of it. Kind of more of this, I don't know, I see these different layers of trees as something where I can kind of have this wind or something, that kind of this, I don't know, this, maybe seasonal kind of snow shower going through it. I don't know, it's not snow shower, snow flurry, maybe not so much of a flurry, but I don't know, a light, a light dusting, that's the word I'm trying to look for, like a dusting of snow kind of meandering through this spruce forest, and I want to try something with that. Okay, now I've inked this up. I just re-inked this pad too, so I've really taken off a lot of the ink right here in that impression, because I want this to stamp, and I don't want it to be too dark. I want various values of this tree in this composition, so I'm going to do some of these a little bit lighter than others, just to create that sense of depth within this two-dimensional space right here, okay? Alright, now I've masked that off so it looks like it's, behind this little ridge right in here. And let's see, try to figure out some other locations that I want it to go. I want to keep this one really simple now, so maybe it'll be a two-stamp design, but hopefully it will look nice and deep and rich in the end result. And I don't want it to necessarily look like, it's just the same image used over and over and over I want there to be kind of a sense of, I don't know, pattern, I guess, with the same image, but I don't necessarily want people to say, oh, there's the same tree used over and over and over again. But there are repetitions of pattern in nature, certainly. So the way I try to create variation in this is with, you know, differing values and using certain portions of it, you know. So, yeah, I mean, if you look close, yeah, it is the same image, but it's not so picket fence-like, you know, where it's just the same thing used over and over and over again, you know, the same height, same value, and kind of the same, I don't know, the same line, I guess it could be. Okay, let's see, let's throw this one down here. This is a Marvy black, by the way. If you have different brands of black, and some just stamp out lighter than others, maybe you want to use that. It doesn't always have to be one brand of ink or one tone, you know, you can use variations of it. Okay, so here's a pure black or re-inked black. That one is. This one's a little bit lighter, right, because I've stamped it off. So you really get a lot more mileage, I think, you know, out of your stamps and everything, out of your inks, sorry. Well, and stamps, if you just use them in a little bit of a different way, you know. This would go for everything. You can do word stamps that way, you know. You can alter the look of a word stamp. Let's say you're going to stamp it in black. If you kind of wipe off the bottom and you stamp it, it'll look like it's kind of bottom lit, or you can wipe it off a little bit on the top, and it'll look like it's top lit. I'm very much into the idea of really getting a lot of mileage out of your existing stamps, your existing supplies, both, you know, the stamping world and stamps, and in your media. Okay, there's another tree back there. Maybe I'll try to go for a third one here. Let's give it a try. Let's see if it looks like it's really distant. Let's go right here. Okay, something like that. A lot of depth here, just with your variation of value, and it's not even a different color, it's just using different amounts of ink on your stamp. Okay, so it looks pretty good. Let me see if this is, someone was saying that they're getting a lot of smearing when they're using their stamps, and what I always say is kind of hold this up and you can kind of see, you know, if there's a little puddles of ink, especially in a very solid image, you know, there might be little puddles of ink here and there, and they asked me if you can heat set it, and you certainly can, you know, to kind of expedite the drying process. But I think that's, it's a little bit wet. I'm going to get some smearing, but the way this is going to look in the end result, it's going to look, there's going to be a lot of tones in here, so I'm not going to worry about, you know, kind of blurring some of this. Now, if I run some ink over here and it really smears it, I don't want that. But if it goes a little bit, then so be it. I can live with that. Okay, now this is a half page. It's 11 inches by 4 1/4. And it's going to take a lot of ink. Now this is, I'm going to create kind of a first snow of the year type of thing. And so I'm going to do this in blue tones. A half page scene takes quite a bit of ink if you're going for a pretty full saturation like I am. That being said, if you have any re-inkers, okay, let's say for, you know, like a memento, if you're a scenic stamper and, you know, blues are, you know, very common color that you're using, I would recommend getting a blue re-inker of something, Memento, Summer Sky, re-inker. That value of blue would be perfect. I happen to have a lot of supplies over the years that I've collected, so like Adirondack lights, so it's called Seashells Ocean Aqua, but they changed the name to Adirondack Lights Aqua. That's a really good one. Salvia blue. Tumbled Glass, I think it's called, in the Distress line of inks. I don't have it, but it's a really light blue. I like the idea of that one being used for this purpose, and the purpose is getting a lot of coverage, okay, from that first light blue. So I'm just going to put a puddle of ink like that. A few drops like that should do it, okay? And that should give me a really great tone to utilize. Okay. Getting some ink off my wand here. I didn't even bother cleaning this. It had some blue on it before. I'm just going to take this now and really sop it up. See that? Looks like I've done this a few times. And I'm just what I've done is I've created kind of a stamp pad on a stick. Okay, this is a color box stylus tool. Okay, you can use like cosmetic sponges like this or something as well, and it works very well. Back in the day, in the old days, gosh, I find myself saying that a lot these days, but they didn't have any kind of specific. I think this pad is starting to crumble. This is crumbling on me, but don't worry about it. Brand new ones, or I would just say like new ones don't do this, but this pad right here, I believe, this comes out of my demo kit, and this is probably 15 or 20 years old, and I've used it a lot, believe me, in workshops and demonstrations and convention make and takes where hundreds of people are sitting in and doing our demonstrations. So they don't crumble quickly, okay? They can tear on you now if you're scrubbing back and forth. I have a very light touch now, okay? I'm just letting the ink do the work. Okay, this is a very light color of blue now. Just kind of running this through. I'm going now, on this one I am going to go for some streaks. I want it to look like the wind is blowing through the trees here, okay? And this is giving me a pretty good coverage. You know, I've just inked it up that one time with the reinker fluid. That's what's really nice about the reinker fluids. You can get a really good saturation of ink on your tip here. You don't need reinkers for every color, you know. Just some light colors would be my recommendation, like a yellow maybe, and pink and blue. Those are the kind of the primary colors in a very light shade. Pink is, you know, kind of a lighter version of red, and red's a primary color. The reason being is the pink and yellow can mix to form an orange. I could use a yellow over the blue, and that gives me a green. That's if you like kind of this look, and you like kind of the saturated look, you know, kind of looks like a postcard at times, you know, going for that type of appearance, because glossy cardstock is the type of paper that printers use in their printing. Let me see something here. Okay. I have some areas of light that I've retained here and there. It's not quite so apparent what I'm doing right now because this is a very light shade of blue, okay? But I have achieved a reasonably good application of this existing ink, okay? That's when I know to move on to my next tone. It's like, when do you know to move on to your next color? Well, if I keep applying that same blue down, or whatever color you happen to be working with, if it's just not getting any darker, then that's, you know, you've probably achieved a pretty decent saturation of it. And you're ready to move on. Now, I have a habit. Usually I try to go for nice smooth, you know, applications of my ink to get nice transitions and everything like that. But I'm going to try to see if I can force myself to get a little bit more streaky with this one, okay? So I can have this kind of the wind kind of blowing through, you know, the scene. Maybe I'll try to go for like an arc or something like that. Come down like this, maybe a little S curve or something. I've done this before, I think last year in a video. And I think it, I can't remember the name of it. But, oh, Snow Flurry, I think. And let's go for that little, kind of see that arcing thing through there. I use it a little bit too much, but I can hit that area with a little bit more of a darker tone to get that kind of that arc a little bit more apparent. I colored up too much over there right now, but it's okay for right now. This is a kind of a cobalt looking blue from Marvy. It's just called light blue. It's a very bright blue. Okay, in terms of its intensity, I really like it for that reason. The Memento Bahama blue is also very good. It's not quite as bright, but it's roughly the same hue as this one. But it's basically a medium tone blue, and you can use a medium tone blue, whatever one you happen to have, mix and match. A lot of people have many different brands of pads and different colors, and you know, I always recommend just trying what you have, mix and match. I'm not mixing like an oxide ink with this one, or a alcohol ink and dye-based ink or something like that, but you can certainly utilize, you know, in this technique right here, whatever dye-based pads you have. Okay, something like that. Moving up into a little bit of a darker blue right now. This one's kind of a navy blue. It's just called Blue from Marvy. Okay, it'd be similar to the Danube blue, or if you have a denim blue or something, I don't know. All these companies are very creative with their names, you know. I think like a denim blue, you know, that was the Adirondack, very dark blue that I really liked a lot. It's probably a little bit more marketable that way, or if you call it something kind of, I don't know, enticing, you know, than medium blue, you know what I mean, or dark blue. Okay, kind of going for a little bit more choppy look, you know. To look a little bit more like the wind or something, you know. I want to create a kind of a depiction of that kind of flowing through my scene here. I want to give it a little bit of a movement to it. Drama? Well, I guess so. Anytime you have kind of movement and you know, kind of these angles, you know, you can kind of create a little bit of a sense of motion, and motion usually means, or could mean drama. It depends on what type of motion. You know, if it's a little bit more textured and you know, dynamic of a kind of motion to your streaks, I guess, you know. Something like that. It's going to go on like that a little bit, huh? I can do this 10 different times, and it would come out different every time. Even if I tried to, you know, kind of do it the same. It's because there's so much variation, you know, that can happen in this type of kind of free-form ink application. I mean, it's, you know, it's almost like you're doing, you know, paintbrush streaks. See, I'm just kind of staying with this one for a while because I think there's more that can be said with this ink right now. Almost done though with it. Okay. If you want it a little bit darker, kind of tap it around like so. Okay. All right. Now, I don't know what the darkest blue you have, but mine is Prussian blue. It's one of the darkest blues that I've seen out there on the market over the years. And it's the number 29 from Marvy. See that right there? Very rich. It still has some of the other blue in it, so it's not getting quite as dark as it could get. Marvy doesn't sell their Marvy matchable pads anymore, but they still have their re-inkers for all of their pads still around, and they have blank pads. So if you want a really good blue, dark blue, it might be a good idea to invest in a blank pad and a re-inker of the Prussian blue. A lot of colors, you can kind of find, with various lines of, and various companies, right? Christmas green or yellow or something like that. But there are certain colors, that are pretty specific to certain, those manufacturers that made it. And I don't know. You can tell me. I haven't seen too many dark blues out there. I used to like that denim blue, like I said, from the Adirondack line, but Ranger discontinued that Adirondack line. I don't know. Yeah, mention in the comments section if you know something. I would love a dark blue that's practically black, as a matter of fact. I have my stylus tool on its edge. Kind of going for a streakier type of mark. Isn't that beautiful how that kind of tree sits in the back, the kind of dark you make the perimeter. I love that kind of vignette type of look, with the darker edges, darker perimeter. Alright, now let's go all the way to black. I have to be careful with this one now because I just re-inked it, so it's going to be pretty juicy. Every time you change colors or inks, just go in a little corner and get a feel for it. Okay, that's not too much darker. And again, it's because I have a lot of those other blues already in the pad, so when I ink up like this, because it's fairly saturated already, it's not, taking too much of that black in immediately. Oh, no, I think it did. That's pretty dark right there. So anyways, when you move into a darker tone, just kind of stay on the outside area a little bit longer before you kind of take it into your scene. You don't want to have a big streak of something that, maybe would be too much in a given area. But you never have to do kind of this expressionistic, type of mark like, and it's stuck there and you can't do it. If I just kind of pull it in from the outside edge like this, I have a lot of control over it. And I can use some ink that's on my tip here, and when I come into this area right here, closer to the light, it's kind of dry on my tip here, so I'm applying that shade of gray. And now it's just straight black, right? So remember, you can get different impressions using a drier stamp, and you can certainly get a different coverage of ink with a drier tip right here. So, and if you want it stronger, ink up, and just go straight in there, and you can get a nice dark area with that. Okay? So you don't always have to go with a fully engaged and saturated tip like that, okay? So really get a lot of mileage out of your inks. You know, utilize whatever color you're working with and utilize it from its very wet incarnation to a dry incarnation, because the wettest incarnation is going to give you the strongest mark, saturation, application of that color, but you can get all of those incarnations of that given color in intensity. You know, the drier it is, the lighter it stamps. You know, the duller it is. Value from dark to light. If you're going with a very light color, like light blue, it's not going to get that dark right here the more you put on there, but at its fullest saturation, that'll be the darkest it'll ever get. But then you can get it all the way to white too. Okay, building a pretty strong vignette around the edges like that. Okay. I really like my corners dark. Even in a very light scene, I tend to go pretty dark on the edges. Because even if I want something to look fairly light, if I make the edges corners darker, then it seems lighter by contrast, okay? And I have a very fun technique that I'll be applying on this scene here shortly. I'm almost done with the inking process here. Okay, alright. Let's take a look at that. It's kind of fun. It's a little bit different having that movement like that. Okay. Oh, it's kind of interesting. It'd be kind of interesting if I had some kind of glossy cardstock in the background and I did this over it. That might look, I don't know, kind of like a interesting abstract. Could be like an abstract mess, but I don't know, maybe you can use it as some sort of texture or something like that to matte something off with, I don't know. Maybe matte this scene off. Okay, this is pigment ink right here. Let's see if I can create a little bit of a glow coming out of some areas in here. Okay, I didn't leave a lot of white in here, and this is where this kind of looks effective, is if you have some kind of whiter areas here, you know, here and there, to create a little bit of a kind of a glowing light type of effect. Can you see that in there? Okay, maybe I can put some down here at the base. It's a little bit of mist. I have a couple little areas in here that are a little bit light. So it's where those areas are light, at the intersection of where it meets a little bit darker, that's where I like to use it. So it's a little bit lighter there, and it gets darker right above it, right? So where light meets dark, I can put some there and see it kind of looks like this little glowing mist, right? It's like it dissipates as it moves higher up, at least in terms of the lighting that's on it. Okay, see that right there? So remember, you have to kind of retain some areas of light. Well, it depends on what pigment ink you're using. Like I have some light blue pigment ink, and maybe that would look okay over here, but if you're putting white, then you have to have a little bit of retention of that white of the paper in that area. Okay? And the reason being is if there's white down here, what you're saying is that white light is hitting it. Okay? And what you're saying with this kind of misty look is you're saying there's some fog there, and that fog is being illuminated by that light that's hitting it, okay? If this was all yellow in here, you know, and instead of white, and if I wanted to, you know, to look like there was light hitting somewhere, I have to use like a yellow pigment ink, you know, to do that. So use your pigment ink applications, the color of whatever your lightest things within the scene are, okay? And my lightest things in the scene are the areas where I just didn't tone it up, you know, with some sort of color. You know, the blues in this case are the black. Okay, I'll lay down some of this down here. There isn't any light down there, but I want to see if I can get it thin enough to where, you know, it looks kind of interesting, maybe. A little bit too much. See that? It looks kind of weird right there, right? So I'm just going to keep tapping it and see if I can spread it around a little bit, where it doesn't look so kind of out of place. It's kind of spreading out a little bit. It's kind of thinning it out a little bit too. The trick to, or the key to applying this type of thing is really having the right amount of ink on your tip right here. My pad is very, very dry, okay? So if you're using a very wet pigment ink pad, which most of you will, you really want to just barely tap it in there. Don't squish it in there, otherwise you're going to be getting way too much ink on your tip, okay? Just kind of tap it on the surface a little bit, then kind of really tap it off and kind of spread it around your tip there. Okay, that looks okay. Alright. Now let me go for a little bit more of a specific application of some snow, or the depiction of snow. This is just a white gel pen. And I'll just start applying this to some of my branches. I have a lot of trees in here, so I don't think I want to spend too much time doing this, but I will apply some. This is the part where time lapse, you know, kind of fast forwarding of the application of this would be appropriate. But you do have your toggle, so you can toggle ahead 10 minutes and see where I get to. I don't know if it's going to take me that long. Where I'm applying this is on the top sides of a lot of these branches in here. Okay, so you can see the difference between that and that. Okay. Okay, put it on some of this tree in the distance, the lighter tree. Kind of gives a little bit of dimension to the tree. It looks a little bit more three-dimensional by having something on it, on the branches. You're seeing that there's dimension to it, so you know, snow is landing on something. So far, so good. Okay, now this tree is in, in a lot more darkness over here, so I probably won't apply as much because, you know, the snow on these branches wouldn't be reflecting very much light because they're in shadow or in the darker areas, so not as much light is hitting it. I'll put some on just to define the forms a little bit, maybe a couple little smaller little dots, perhaps. See something like this. It kind of brings them out a little bit from the background, and it gives them a similar texture. Okay, there's more on these ones right here that are in the light. On these ones right here, I'll put it on the left side of the tree for the most part, because the lighting is coming from this area. So, on the other side of the light, I will do the opposite. And we'll just use these little highlights to reiterate our lighting scheme, okay? It's a really easy way to kind of define your lighting scheme. Okay, so the light is coming from in here, so let's put these trees right here with a little bit of that highlighting on the right side. It doesn't have to be so literal. I mean, I could put a few dots over here too, but I'm just kind of a little bit more so on this side. Okay, a few little dots will do. Okay, see that right there? It kind of makes it stand out a little bit. Now see how that looks overall. That center type of kind of illumination kind of welcomes the viewer into, you know, it's like these pillars and columns, kind of the way to enter the scene. Here's this little trunk right here. If I want to put a few little highlights on the side of that trunk. And on this side, I will put the highlights on the side of the trunk, or branches, or whatnot, facing the light. Okay, now let me go get my next medium, which is the bleed-proof white, and I need to add a little bit of water into this to reconstitute it. Yeah, it's really absorbed. You just add a few little drops of water into this, and I need a clean splatter brush one. See, I didn't even wash this toothbrush off last time and it has some dried up paint on it, so This paint just, it cleans right out of the brushes very easily, and this water in here just constitutes this paint very quickly. It goes right back into solution. So let me get that set. We'll come back in here and we'll splatter away. Okay, I have my bleed-proof white reconstituted. Actually, it wasn't very hard. I just put a few drops of water in there and it mixed up very quickly, but this is probably in the consistency of, I never know what to say about this. It's like, it's thinner than like white glue. Now this is paint, it's not glue, but that's about the consistency you want. You want it to be like a thin, like Elmer's glue type of thing. Not so thin though, not watery thin, but I don't know, just kind of brought back into kind of a nice easy solution. Okay, now, by the way, this bleed-proof white, Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed-proof white, it's a really fantastic medium to have in your supplies. You can do all kinds of different things with it. A lot of people, calligraphers love it. They put it into dip pens and doing letter forms on dark paper. I don't know, just look it up on the online or on YouTube and you see what people do with it. But I like it because it's very opaque, and like it, the name of it, it's bleed proof. So if I spray this with something like a white ink or something like that, chances are it's going to put that blue ink back into solution, and I'll have a bunch of blue dots on there. Not that that would be bad, but that's just not what I'm looking for here. But I'm looking for something to, you know, for a nice kind of opaque consistency, and that's what this is all about. It's probably some very fine, I don't know what this is made out of, but it's a very fine pigment in here. Now I'm trying to get this out because sometimes I think I get a lot out and it's so thin that I just start doing this and it creates a big blob. Okay, if you get a big blob, you know, somewhere, don't worry about it too much. I say that because you can kind of let it set up, or you can get it off when it's still wet too, but even if it's completely dry, you can kind of buff it off and it'll come right off, as far as glossy paper goes. Alright, now I don't do this very often, so I don't have like a lot of control over it, but I have this dark piece of paper right here. Let's do it on this side. Okay, now here's my used toothbrush. Okay, you can have a new toothbrush too, but so I'm going to see where it's, sometimes I do this and it's coming out over here. I need to figure out where it's splattering. Sometimes it doesn't splatter where I think it's going to. See, I need to figure out what it's going to look up. I go for an angle down here or whatnot. See that right there? It's kind of a cool texture. Alright, now here's the movement of this. It's kind of going like this. Focused. Alright, let me see if I can get it with some, I don't know, some degree of direction, which I don't always do. Sometimes it's hard to predict where it's going to go, so like I said, kind of practice with a little bit. That. Maybe I don't want so much in the darker areas. Now, on some of these it looks out of place. So what I do is I just kind of ink back over it again, and it gets rid of it. You know, it's not something that's, you know, like so permanent. Okay. Can you see that? Let me zoom in here for you. And I do work upside down. It's just easier for me to get to this from this side. I'm right-handed, so I don't know. Let's see what it looks like. That. See that texture out of there? I mean, it looks kind of nice, I think. it went over here. I thought it was going over here. Now this does leave the surface a little bit textured, as you can probably guess, because when this dries, you know, these little speckles here have a, you know, kind of a little ridge to them. So my recommendation is really to probably get most of your stamping done before you do this type of application here. This is kind of like one of the final kind of techniques or whatever to do. Now this bleed proof 5 bits, it's I don't know what it is. It feels like chalk to me. It's so chalky, you know, in terms of the consistent. Now see, this is already completely dry. It's almost like powder. If I rub it here, it's like chalk on there, right? So it does dry fairly quickly, and which is good. And okay, now see over here, right there, and over there. I mean, I think that looks okay. But if I want there to be a little bit of variation here, with that, those little dots, which side am I? Okay, I can go back over it with some black, okay, and I can just tint those little dots on the edges with a little bit of black ink. I don't know what they look like. They look a little bit more gray to me, I guess, now. So you can go over them. Alright. Let's go over here. Okay, so I've kind of created that little bit of a vignette again. Or more so. See right over there? So those dots are really obscured. I can see them a little bit more on this side. Okay. On the corners. Okay, let's see. I want to create a little bit more of a specific texture down here. I have some of this Sedge Filler stamp, and see where these little clumps right here. So right along some of these edges like this, down here, on the scene, I'll create a few little highlights to create a little bit of lighting and texture. Kind of here. Okay, I'm having a hard time doing that. It's because there's all this little textured powder created by this, and it's kind of clogging my pen as I do that, so maybe I won't be doing too much of that, needless to say. Okay. Alright, now, let's see if... Maybe I should have done this before I did that splatter painting, but I'm going to go in here. I like these little glowing little spheres in here. See these little ones right there? It's kind of like a little, I don't know, it says kind of like magic to me, having these little glowing spheres in here of light. Maybe they're, you know, snowfall or something like that, or within the scene. I don't know what they would represent. They could be different things for different people. Who knows? But I'm going to add them in here just for that little whimsical, kind of magical little touch. I like it as a textural element too, just in terms of it adds kind of some objects within the scene that are kind of interspersed. They can be kind of floating through the composition, behind things, in front of. So it creates another layer of depth to me in terms of imagery. Now, if you notice, I'm kind of varying my size. If I want a larger little, or larger sphere, then I'm just kind of drawing it like that. Okay, you just kind of draw a little, do a little scribble in there. Okay, there we go. Now let's go back to our pigment ink applicator. AKA your Q-tip. Take in some ink, like so. Okay. Now let's bring some of these little spheres of light to life. We'll make them glow. Now you have to have this kind of dry on here, so blot off, you know. Chances are you're going to have to blot it off. And just to reiterate what I've done in other videos in terms of this thing. I'll do it right here, okay? See this right here? That's about the amount. Now watch me do this, dabbing once. See that right there? It's barely visible, isn't it? Okay, so watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 little things, and that's just, you know, a little dab. Now, I'm just touching the surface with it. I'm not smashing my tip down, okay? But that's what you want right there, so you want to go like this. 1. See, that there's just nothing there, right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's 20 little taps right there, okay? Here's 20, I don't know. Here's 30. And that's what you get, okay? You want to get it where it's barely applying, and that's your consistency that you want. So watch this right here. Dabbing it down over this dot. Kind of spreading it out a little bit too. If I find it's applying a little bit thicker, I'll turn my Q-tip a little bit. There you have that little glowing little sphere, okay? It looks kind of weird if you just have one of them. It kind of makes a little bit more sense the more you have. I mean, I don't want 1,000 in here, but see those little spheres like that now? You know, one in the distance, or some, I don't know. Don't always have to be close. Okay, something like that. It's kind of little lively little elements. I don't know, they seem like living creatures to me almost. Speaking of which, I might put something in here. I was thinking it would be a nice place for an object subject matter. Okay, so those little glowing little spheres. They're kind of little lively little elements, I think. Some of those little splatter painting ones you can kind of illuminate that way too. Let's take a look at this in the overall. Okay. Let me go see if I can find an image that I'd like to place somewhere within this scene. Word stamp might not be bad too. Maybe here or something like that. Let's see what we have and finish this scene off. Okay, I have my little dough here, and I think that would be a good spot for it. If you're ever curious about, where something should go, don't hold it out here and say, should I use this in here? Just kind of, if you have some small thing, or stamp it out on something and kind of move it around a little bit. If you don't have something indexed like this one, but I think that would look okay. Somewhere right here, maybe not centered. It'd be too much dramatic balance. I want a little bit of imbalance for composition's sake. I usually have. I mean, you can have it over here, but I usually have it something kind of going into my scene. Usually, it's not a rule, hardened, But here's what I do. Okay. If a creature is standing in grass, you're not going to see the feet, okay? So I'm going to wipe off the bottom a little bit, and however much I wipe off, that's how deep that grass is, or snow, or whatever you're going to be doing. So kind of remember that little trick there, and I think it looks a little bit better in the end result when you do something like that. Those little details like that. Light, even pressure. Don't squash your little creatures now at this point in time. Okay, something like that. Seems to fit pretty well. Okay. Alright, now I'm thinking about this night music. I think that would go very well with this. There's something kind of, I don't know, rhythmic, I guess, about this, and it does look kind of bare up to me right there, so I think what I'm going to use is this Brilliance pad. Okay, Brilliance, it's not going to stamp out really white, which, I don't know, may or may not look better if it did. Opaque. So it's probably going to stamp it a little bit more translucent. But, I don't know, we'll test it out and see what it looks like. And I say test it out because if I don't like it, I'll probably have a little bit of time where I can wipe it off if I don't like it, but I don't know, we'll just see how it goes. Okay, let me see. I'm going to stamp this a little bit off camera because my camera's right in my face right here. I can't really see too well, so stamp position would work fairly well right here. I hope I just didn't double stamp that. I touched down, I thought, oh. I don't know if I have that positioned exactly where I want it to go. If it's close enough, I'll be satisfied. Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's a little bit tilted, but not too bad. Actually, that looks pretty good in terms of the value of it from light to dark. Oh, that's interesting. I stamped into that ink with this brilliance, and I just blotted it off right here, so it removed a little bit of ink that I stamped into there. I don't know, for some reason, don't know why. I kind of put that dye-based ink back into solution, whatever brilliance inks are made out of. I think that looks pretty. Peace would have been good too. I have this one that says peace. So here we have night music, okay? Okay, let me see, is that dough dry down here? Let me test it. It looks like it is. Okay, so let me show you the final touch on here, okay, where that dough is. Let me use my correct pigmenting ink. I want one that's kind of dry. I don't want my sloppy wet pad, which most of my white pigment ink pads are. They're really juicy. Because I don't use them very often, and, you know, I barely stamp anything in white. You know, and when I use this kind of misting thing, I'm barely using anything, so I'm using this 15-year-old pad. It works really well because most of it is off. But okay, so we have a lot of this in the mist, right? Well, in areas where light meets dark, and I like putting this around objects because it has your little figurines kind of encompassed by, or that's not really the word, but amidst the element within that space. So that's kind of this atmospheric fog in here, and when you put this at the base of the feet like that, it looks like it's in it now. So it goes for a little bit of this kind of immersion into our setting that we were doing. So see that kind of at the base of those feet right there? There was a little bit of it up there, so it's a little bit lighter in the head too, but let's take a look and see what that looks like. In the whole, okay, we have that. See some little fog down there? I'll put a little bit more. Put it right up to its tummy, I think. Alright, so anyway, not too bad. Alright, for the most part, this is like a 2-stamp scene. Now, as far as the main objects within here, you know, the dough and the night music are 2 more, but, you know, this is a half-page scene, and I've created a half-page scene. The structure of it is basically 2 stamps. You have the Spruce Tree Lg and the Sedge Filler. And that's pretty nice when you have kind of a, you know, a type of stamping where 2 stamps can speak to, you know, or create an entire setting for really whatever else you want to put in there. And of course the inks that you have play a big part and are a big role in the kind of the dynamics of the overall result. You know, the ink there, that little swatch like that really becomes a vital player in the I don't know, the overall appearance of the scene for sure. And it's nice that when you're applying it in such a kind of a free-form way, that type of thing might seem daunting, you know, to some people a little bit, you know, when you see the end result. But if you kind of just follow along, you know, and just start with very light tones, and you kind of establish a given kind of rhythm, and it's just like this little loop. It's like this little S-curve, right? I mean, you can do all kinds of things. You can do like little jagged things like this. That's like an Aurora Borealis or whatever. You can do all kinds of different looks in here. It's actually kind of liberating, you know, because it's daunting at first because you might try to go for something. I want that to be exactly like that, you know, example or something like that. And it's kind of hard to achieve that, you know, but when you kind of just free up and know that you're going to get something different every time, it's, like I said, it's a little bit more liberating because you never know what you're going to get. But I think, you know, when you do it this way and you leave some, you know, the retention of some lights, I think the end results look very nice no matter what it, you know, configuration looks like. Then, you know, for me, I added in these extra textures right over the top of the whole thing in the form of the pigment ink applications and the splatter paint applications and the gel pen applications, so you get this kind of dynamic surface. It actually looks really, really busy when you look up close like that. Maybe even cluttered, you know, when I look at that. But, you know, when you're looking at it at arm's distance, which, you know, most people will look at a card as, you know, holding it up, you know, to your face and kind of inspecting. People look at cards like this. They open up a card, you know, an envelope, and they pull this out. And, you know, that's the distance you'll be looking at it. But applying all those different textures like that really brings something together, and it kind of, I don't know, it adds those final touches that can really finish a scene off and to really bring it into kind of focus and, I don't know, the kind of the end results as far as your detailing goes. And I think that it's really fun to do too, you know, adding those little balls of glowing light and tapping those in. It's really kind of fun watching that kind of happen right before your eyes and being able to create, you know, the glows as large as you want them to be. And it just happens very slowly. Nothing kind of, you know, the splatter thing is, yeah, it's fairly spontaneous, you know, but practice it, you know, a little bit before you go on there and just add a little bit at a time. And that's the process, and it all comes into focus, you know, fairly quickly, even on a half-page scene like this one. And, I don't know, it's just a lot of fun to do so. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the scene. I guess the title of this one is Night Music. Hope you like night music. Hope you like the techniques here. If you have any questions, you can drop us a note in the comments section, or you can visit Stampscapes.com, where we have, I don't know, 10,000 different scenes up there, and all of these videos are embedded in the lessons section as well. So, anyways, thanks again, and happy holidays to all of you.